Okay, well, I think we'll get started here. I want to thank you all profusely for coming on a beautiful sunny morning here. I know that this probably wasn't the first thing you had planned for such a beautiful day, but your involvement in this is going to be critical for how the public comments on this EIS, and it's an important step, and I'll show you why we think this is so important for the public to be involved in the commenting as we go on. So we're going to hopefully try to focus on where the big open questions, problems, inaccuracies are in the EIS. As you probably know, it's about a 800 or 900 page document. I haven't read the whole thing, but we have volunteers who have divvied up the EIS to analyze it, to try to understand it, and then we share amongst ourselves, like, oh, I found this in this section, this might be worthy of comment. So we have material for you all after we're done here. We have specific questions that we've found in various parts of the EIS that might be useful for you to be aware of or look at as you create your comments. And we're also happy for this to be a two-way conversation. If you notice something in the EIS and you go, it doesn't seem like CENSE knew about this, we'd love to get that feedback and turn our attention to those questions. So let's see, I think this would be a little bit more visible if we turned the outer, let's see, I think it's just that outer switch there. No, this way, yeah. A little bit, okay, good. I wanted this to be dark enough for you to see this little tiny glow in the corner, which I put there on purpose, because to me, we are actually, I believe, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. There are like rays of hope in this process. I know it seems like this has been a freight train that's unstoppable, but it's about to run into unstoppable trends in electricity usage, in technology. And I'm going to tell you about a few of those today. And it's really exciting. We've been working on this now for 3.5 years. And things that we said in the beginning that might have seemed a little bit crazy, like we were mentioning batteries and everybody going, that's a good one. Well, it's happening. It's really happening now. So this is very good. Oh, I should say, my name is Don Marsh. I'm the president of CENSE. But there is a lot of talent that's backing me up, that's providing all this good support and good analysis. I'd like to just point out, let's see, is Steve here? Steve O'Donnell? He's still out in the lobby. Okay, you met Steve on the way in. He was our first president. He and I kind of co-founded this group, although when I say that, I'm going, man, there's a lot of people who were really instrumental in this. And one of the people I'd like you to know about, C.V. Chung, sitting right here. He was an employee of PSE for 23 years, and he really kicked off our understanding that this project is not needed. It's being pursued for other reasons besides what PSE says, electrical reliability. There's other things happening, and we're very grateful to CV for opening our eyes. Otherwise we would have just been a group of residents saying, we don't like this, and we wouldn't have gotten very far. So we're standing on a lot of huge shoulders here to get here today. All right, so just to be clear about what we're talking about, I think it's important to make a distinction between Energize East Side, which is the project on the left, which is an 18-mile transmission line, goes through 4 East Side cities, operating at 230,000 volts. That's twice the voltage that's going on the lines that exist today. And then there's another project that has gotten a lot of attention. It's called the Lake Hills Transmission Line. It's 3 miles, operates at 115,000 volts. This is the project that PSE proposed to put down 148th Avenue taking out 300 trees and really impacting an urban boulevard that we feel is sort of the epitome of the city and the park. So that's the one that if you've heard about court cases, things like that, that's that one that's been going on for quite a few years. We are at an earlier stage on Energize East Side. And we've learned a lot about the things that happened on the Lake Hills line. Now we know how important it is to participate in things like the EIS, and there's going to be an administrative hearing either later on this year or early next year that's of critical importance. So these are all things that we learned from that project. Okay, just quickly, what is an EIS? An EIS stands for Environmental Impact Statement, and the intended purpose, as stated in this EIS, it says it's to identify reasonable alternatives that could attain or approximate PSE's objectives at a lower environmental cost. The EIS, we think, is doing a very poor job at its intended objective. Anyway, keep that in mind when you're reading any part of the EIS. Is it doing this? And it's also probably important to point out that in the end, PSE is the one who funds the EIS. And of course, what that really means is all of us get to pay for it in our electricity bills later on. And this is quite surprising to me, is that PSE has already spent $26 million on this project. They haven't even applied for the permit to build it yet. And $26 million, each of you has already contributed in your bills $25 to this project. It's going, well, if they're allowed to put it into the rate base, and I think we're going to contest that, say, you proposed a very bad project, we don't feel like we should have to pay for it. But right now, that's the way it would work out if nothing else happened. So our strategy this time on this phase of the EIS is actually different from what we did in the first phase of the EIS that happened about a year ago. At that time, we spent tens of thousands of dollars to get an expert document on alternatives that we submitted to the EIS, and the EIS consultants responded by saying in this EIS, they mentioned it one time and then sort of just dismissed it with a wave of a hand. So that may still be a great investment when we get to the administrative hearing, but we thought that this time we would prefer to save our money, our precious funds that come from our neighbors. We decided we would preserve those funds for the administrative hearing, which is going to be really critical. And we're going to take on the job of commenting ourselves. So what you and the rest of our neighbors put in is what's going to go into the EIS. So we wanted to let you know what we think are sort of the top 10 issues that CENSE is going to be addressing. Actually, just to even narrow it down to 10 things was really hard. To sort of get your hands around it and figure out what was more important than what. It took a lot of effort just to get down to the top 10. When you see these things, I've got to go through the list. You can include this in your own comments to sort of, add volume to it, or you can address other things, and that's good too. In fact, it's great to have a wide variety and diversity of comments. You never know which comment might be the sticking point for the whole project. So we want to have as much ammunition, as much facts as we can to bring to bear on this question. So,
Don,
yes.
You don't need to take notes on this because at the tables when you make your comments, we have handouts, so you can just sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Very good.
And not take notes.
Yes. You can take notes if you want, but we can give you the summary of this as we go. Yes, Kurt.
So I just want to clarify, this is the top 10 problems with EIS.
Yes.
Not with Energize East Side.
That's a great
Totally
point.
different list.
And thank you very much for making that. This is kind of a different presentation, a different focus than we've had in all our other, maybe you've attended another CENSE meeting, and we criticize the project and we criticize PSE. This is focused on what's in the EIS. So it is a different list than what we might talk about if we were just saying, hey, here are the problems with the project. These are the problems with the EIS. Very good point.
John, how many people are out to do this EIS? I mean, what is this group?
Yeah, it's a group of consultants that's hired actually by the city of Bellevue. Bellevue is reimbursed by PSE. And I don't know exactly how many people that is. I'd say, a wild guess, maybe it's half a dozen, but I truly don't know the exact number.
Heidi Bedwell one of the people?
Heidi Bedwell works for the city. She is the official in the city that's responsible for environmental studies.
This is just how big it is, if anybody hasn't seen it.
Oh yeah, that's the EIS, but that's not the appendices. so it's that plus, yeah. It's substantial. We sent out a newsletter with Jan's cat perched on top of the EIS. And it was good. Okay, so our number 10 issue. I'm going to do this Letterman style, working from our up to our most significant issue. So when trees are our number 10 issue, oh man, there's some really good stuff coming up. But I mean, trees, of course, is a huge issue. PSE is saying that they're going to have to remove, depending on the route, somewhere between 3,600 and 5,400 trees. And the EIS says, well, that's less than significant. Oh boy, I just cannot believe that is the conclusion of this, and I'll show you why in a minute. The other problem here is that there's no list of the actual trees that are in jeopardy here. Now, that might seem like a big task to write down thousands of trees, but this is exactly what happened for the Lake Hills transmission line. They showed exactly each tree that was going to be removed, and this makes a big difference to people who are, the transmission lines going through their backyard, and they know they're going to lose some trees. They want to know which trees are going to go, and then they can judge whether that was less than significant or not. This is a hill not too far, a park, not too far from where I live, Forest Hill Park. And this is how it looks today. And you can see back here, let's see if this is the transmission pole, and you can barely see the lines hidden among the trees. And it's not our favorite feature of this park, but it's not too bad. We got a guy involved who has a PhD from MIT, and he said, oh, I think I could do a simulation of what the new poles and wires would look like. And so this is what he came up with. Now, I'm going to go back and forth a minute here, because it's not just that the poles and the wires are now much more prominent, and the wires are thicker, so that it makes them stand out a little bit more. But also, you can see that there's some trees that went away. And he went out and measured very carefully to figure out which trees were going to go. This is a little bit different picture than you see from, there are photo simulations of the EIS. Just want you to be aware that those photo simulations come from a consultant that's paid for by PSE. PSE worked with them to find the appropriate perspectives to use. We don't think it's a real accurate depiction of what the actual impact would be. So I think of this park and I go, that is not a less than significant impact on this park. The number 9 issue is a really central question about how much this project serves local needs versus maintaining a very large transfer of electricity to Canada. At the same time, we're having major outages of equipment on the east side. So this is actually, PSE lists about, 7 or 8 primary assumptions in their studies that that justify Energize East Side. And this is their number 5 assumption, is that they're sending 1,500 megawatts of electricity to Canada. And this is a bad assumption because, first of all, you can publicly, there's a public website run by BPA that shows what the energy transfers are between the US and Canada. And this situation has not happened in PSE's scenario, which is very cold weather. It has not happened once in the last decade. So this is really not realistic. But even if it were something that PSE would have to take into account, now let's be clear, this is not PSE sending 1,500 megawatts to Canada. This is BPA. So most of this electricity is traveling on lines that are to the east of us, big 500 kilovolt lines. But a little bit of the electricity leaks through our system, and it's enough to cause problems on the east side. Now, if that were to happen, if this transfer was happening and it was stressing PSE's equipment, PSE would call regulators at BPA and say, hey, we've got an emergency here. We can't sustain this level of power transfer. Can you cut it out? And BPA, within 15 minutes, could cut that electricity to Canada. Now, what would happen? Would lights go out in Canada? No, because Canada is self-sufficient regarding electricity. This is actually just a financial transaction that was set up by the Columbia River Treaty some years ago. And so we believe that you don't need to include this in the justification for a local project.
Just to clarify, so it's an economic impact. In other words, they're saying that the cost of the project will be less because they're going to be selling energy to Canada.
No. They are using this assumption to say this is what causes overloads on our equipment, and so we have to do something about it. And we say you don't have to do something about it because this energy transfer would not persist if we were having outages of equipment in our area. And it's a combination of very cold weather, outages of 2 major transformers on the east side, 6 local generation plants turned off for some reason, and this 1,500 megawatts to Canada. You put all those circumstances together, and then you start getting overloads on PSE's equipment. We say, okay, but how long would that problem persist? Well, in 15 minutes, this flow would be gone, and then 80% of the overloads on PSE's equipment would be eliminated. This was found by Bellevue's independent analyst. We asked them this question: what happens if that was turned off? And most of the overloads went away. There was 1 overload left on 1 transformer, and it was only by a few percent. And we say there's a lot easier and less expensive ways to address that issue than Energize East Side. In fact, what would really happen is Canada would start sending energy to us. This happens all the time, especially in cold weather, and that would take off the load on that final transformer. So we could address this just by policy, and the policy already exists. So it's a fake scenario.
Could you help define for me, since I'm first time here?
Yeah.
BPA.
Yeah, Bonneville Power Administration. They are the federal authority. They govern the grid in this part of the country. I have more to say about BPA, and actually, I think it's this side, yes. So another of PSE's assumptions is that during the summertime, they assume that 2,850 megawatts will be going to California. Now, just to put these numbers in perspective, that amount of electricity is about at least 5 or 6 times the amount of electricity that the entire east side is using at the peak summertime usage. So this is an enormous amount of electricity. Again, it's not PSE that's sending this. This is BPA operating their lines, and PSE is just getting a little of the byflow. And so we say, again, BPA is responsible for this. If there are any problems, they are required, if there are any problems anywhere along the lines, if their transfers are causing problems, they have to reduce the transfer until the problem disappears. That's just the way That's just the way it works. And PSE is counting on people not to know this kind of thing, especially like our council members. Probably don't know how the grid works. They just trust what PSE says. Just this week, BPA announced that they are canceling a $1.2 billion transmission line that was going to run between southwestern Washington and northern Oregon. The purpose of that line was to facilitate large transfers of electricity to California. And what BPA found was that California doesn't need so much electricity coming from other places. They're putting in a lot of solar panels and batteries and other things that are addressing their needs. So this is not a need. So BPA figured out that they could use things like flow control devices and batteries to save customers hundreds of millions of dollars. That was announced on Thursday of this week. The glow in the upper left-hand corner just got a little bit brighter. Another thing that we find is just very disappointing about this EIS is it is taking PSE's word, their analysis, to eliminate all other alternatives. It'd be great for them, for the EIS folks, to actually do a little bit of their own analysis and really check this out. But we have many examples of where modern technology, modern batteries, are addressing problems like PSE says they have, and we're wondering why not here. For example, in Southern California, there was an uncontrolled leak of methane gas that would have been used to serve peak power during just this last winter. They were very worried about it. The utility said, you know, we think we might have rolling blackouts. And Tesla came along and said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. We'll put a big grid battery in. We can do it in 3 months, and you won't have to worry. And so they did it. In 3 months, they had this battery, that's the actual picture of it, operating in Southern California. And we're saying, well, you know, this seemed to work out for them. Could it address our problems on the east side? There's been no credible analysis of this in recent times. There's some old data and old analysis that PSE has leaned on to dismiss batteries. And then they've exaggerated how much. They keep saying, well, it would have to be the biggest battery in the world. That's not even true anymore. There are very large batteries serving other places, but we don't need a huge battery to begin with. If the need is real, it develops over time. And we could start with a very small battery, add a few more banks as the need is demonstrated. We think this is a very economical way to address the problem. And the one other thing that's really cool is this will lower carbon emissions, because then you can store variable sources of electricity like solar and wind. You can store it when they're overproducing what we need, and then at night or on a calm day, you can withdraw that electricity from the batteries, and you don't have to turn on a gas-fired power plant and produce carbon emissions. Yes?
Have you invited Tesla to comment on this part of the environmental impact?
I think we will try again. We had somebody who had contact with Tesla, and we said, hey, wouldn't it be great to get Elon Musk here to tell us how he could save us. He's a really busy guy, so I don't think we got his attention the first time around. But this is becoming a high-profile case. I don't know. Maybe he'll be interested. But yes, we should check it out. Yes.
They're installing or did install a project in Everett?
Yes.
With a flow battery, maybe
Yes.
somebody from that project.
Yes, and that is a very exciting project because that battery was manufactured by Mukilteo-based Uni Energy Technologies. So if we used our own company, our own local resources to address this problem, is much better than buying poles from probably outside the country and then digging big holes next to a petroleum pipeline. That's not a good use of our money. Supporting local jobs and local clean tech companies, really smart way to invest our money.
Even more local, I'm friends with a guy that works at the company that did the for that battery.
Okay.
And I think he works in Redmond, so
Yeah.
the company is local.
Yes. There are people in my neighborhood who work for the battery company. So yes, we could help pay their salaries. That'd be a smart thing to do for our future.
Where would these batteries have to be placed?
Well, a great place.
In our yard? Or?
No. A great place to put them would be between the existing Lakeside substation and the garbage transfer facility. That is actually where PSE is proposing to build their new transformer station. So we could just put the batteries where they're saying they need transformers instead. And it's a light industrial area. You can't really see it from the road. There are no homes close by. Be really good.
Right there off of Richards Road?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's, it would be a good solution there. The other thing about this, though, is batteries don't have to be all clumped together. They could be spread around. There is room in local neighborhood substations to put a few batteries, and there might be some reliability benefits from that. Who knows? We would like to have an expert evaluate the possibilities for us and give us a real sense of what this is. Okay, this is stated right up front in the EIS. We're not going to look at seismic hazards in this EIS. Wow. So as you probably know, it's been a few hundred years since the last major earthquake in our area. And, some people think we're kind of due for another big earthquake. What would happen if the Seattle Fault that runs perpendicular to these transmission lines and the Olympic pipelines underneath them, if that slipped by 10 feet, it would absolutely shear the pipelines. And then if you had transmission wires down, which the EIS says is a possibility, if you have live wires in contact with tens of thousands of gallons of jet fuel or gasoline, you'd have a fire in the middle of an emergency situation where roads might not be easy to navigate, where emergency responders would be doing a lot of other work. This seems like something the EIS should really flesh out. So to just dismiss and say, oh, they'll use appropriate caution in designing this for earthquake purposes, that really doesn't cut it.
Question?
Yeah.
Now, we have that risk today.
That's right.
Yes.
You're implying that it would be worse if we had more powerful, larger lines that might be more likely to topple.
It could be. I'd like to see the analysis on it. The fact that the electricity is at twice the voltage means that it can arc further. It can actually, and this is probably something we should talk about, is we've already had a couple of instances where our current power lines have fallen down and electricity has arced into the pipeline. We already have 2 cases in the past 5 or 10 years where this has happened, and the electricity carved a crater in the pipeline casing that was bad enough that they had to shut down the pipeline and replace that section of pipe. Now, if it was twice the voltage, how much faster would it drill through the casing? It's a big concern.
Also, the poles are metal, and the current poles are wood.
Yeah.
Those are conductors themselves, which in an earthquake would certainly
That's true.
become conductors.
Yep.
And I
Sorry. Okay.
No, the core point being brought up here is that there is no analysis in the EIS. There is no data being put forward
Right.
by PSE around that, and that's the kind of request that we're making here.
Exactly.
We're all speculating here without data.
Right. I hate doing that. Love to have the data. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt before. You mentioned that there have been some previous cases. Do you have those cases that we can reference?
We are planning to write an article about them very soon, and the circumstances were so similar in both these cases that it really speaks actually to my next point, which is the level of risk here.
But to emphasize the point that we don't have data, but this scenario is plausible.
Yes.
Have there been newspaper articles or were there, you know, if we're writing a comment letter, one
Right.
of the things that gives our comment
Yeah.
letter substance is facts, right?
Yes.
So do we have news stories or even a PSE report on their website that actually documents these circumstances?
PSE has been very quiet on these kind of things, so I don't believe that exists. We will definitely look. We have a couple people in this room who are going to be writing a story about these two circumstances, and I believe there's even some photos of the damage that occurred from at least one of those instances. So yeah, we definitely want to flesh this out, and we want to do it in time to get this stuff into the EIS. So I believe if you're subscribed to our newsletter, we will include a reference or a link to that story as soon as we finish it, which should be pretty soon. Yes.
On that same note, I really liked your comments. With each of these top 10 areas, if you could, or someone in this room, could possibly create an indexed list, if you comment on this, here are some things you can hyperlink to, just to show that
Right.
we've all educated ourselves, we aren't
Yes.
just whistling in the wind or saying, I feel like this is happening. We're involved, and this is the data we're using to buttress our.
That's a great point, and we do have sheets that we'll be sharing later on that go through the sections of the EIS, but they don't always have all the links that we know about. So we will improve these in the next few days to try to get you as much, reference material as we can.
I want to point out this top 10 list, as well as all these detailed letter writing, which have lots of references. Those are all on the website.
Okay.
So, and you should keep checking back periodically because we keep updating. There's a special page on the EIS and how to comment, and, complete instructions and examples and all that.
And Kurt knows what he's talking about because he is our webmaster. So he spends a lot of time on it, and we're very grateful for that. All right, so the EIS includes this formula for risk, and we think it's a fine formula. It says risk is defined as the probability or the likelihood of an event occurring multiplied by the severity of the consequences or the impact of that event. Okay, so we put this little table together. It should be in the EIS, but let's just compare these two scenarios. PSE is talking about a rolling blackout. It is so unlikely that they are not actually telling you what the odds are. The odds are really astronomical that this could happen, but PSE just kind of uses, well, it could happen without telling you anything about the likelihood of it. What would the impact be? Well, we say it would be low because even if customers lost power, and we really don't think that would even happen, but if they did, within 15 minutes, BPA would cut the 1,500 megawatts that's assumed in this scenario, and power would be restored. And also, it's a very small percentage of customers. PSE says things like 30,000, and it sounds like, oh my, that's a big number. It's not big. If you've been through any of our storm outages, 30,000 customers out is actually not a big outage. It's about 3%, or less than 3%, of the 1.1 million customers that will pay for this project for decades. So anyway, you multiply those two together, the likelihood of the impact, and we say the risk is low of a rolling blackout. A pipeline fire, okay, we can all agree it's unlikely. You have to assume some things happen to get a pipeline fire. But we have seen two of these in the past 20 years, one in Bellingham and one in Renton. So they do happen. PSE's scenario has never happened. This, at least we've got a couple of data points that this can happen. The impact could be in an urban area like East Side neighborhoods. It could be catastrophic. We're talking about a number of homes consumed by this a pipeline fire. It's a little different from a gas pipe explosion, which is bad, as we saw in Greenwood in Seattle. It takes out things within a radius. But then it's usually pretty much done. Whereas a pipeline fire, you ignite this river of liquid and it starts flowing and taking out whatever's in its path. So we think there could be homes lost, potential for loss of life. So we think if you multiply an unlikely thing by a catastrophic impact, we think it's significant. This table should be in the EIS and it's not there. So just to be fair, let's compare apples to apples.
Hey, Don,
Yes?
so is there actually a table in there now? It just doesn't include these things?
There is no table. There's no table comparing the risk of a rolling blackout versus the risk of a pipeline fire. They are both mentioned. Obviously, the rolling blackouts is the primary is the primary concern of PSE, and the pipeline fire is mentioned there, but they're not compared to say, well, you know, what's a reasonable trade-off between these two levels of risk? Yeah.
I live close enough to this pipeline to be in the fireball if this thing ever catches fire.
Yeah. Me too, actually.
Two things I'd like to know. Number one, how long does it take them to cut off the flow of the water, or excuse me, of the fuel?
Yeah.
Does that take hours, or does that take minutes, or?
So there are some, as I understand it, Steve O'Donnell is actually an expert on this, but there are some automatic valves that can be shut off, and there are some manual valves. We would like to see a lot more of the automatic ones. But even so, when you have these valves, they're not spaced so frequently that even if you cut off the valve, there's still liquid in the pipe that spills out until it's empty. And that can be thousands of gallons before it stops. So if they notice, and you know, I think it actually would take a little time for them to figure out that this needs to be shut off, you're still talking about a very significant event. I mean, we're talking about an event that would put us on the national news, I'm sure. And there's not only homes in danger here, the middle school where my kids went to school is within 300 feet of this pipeline. It's 1,000 kids within 300 feet. And just to put that in perspective, in California, you cannot locate a school within 1,500 feet of a pipeline like this. So I don't even know how that was allowed in the first place. That seems crazy. But to even slightly increase the risk is an unbelievable thing.
Okay, where does the Seattle fault cross the pipeline?
It's close to I-90. I've seen maps. I don't remember it exactly, but it roughly parallels I-90. Okay. All right.
We had an expert at this at our block watch a few years ago, and this guy said, and I think Steve was there. He said we wouldn't even be able to get out of our house, and I mean we'd just be gone.
Yeah.
He said there is no time at all.
It's a frightening possibility,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, I'm gonna try to get through a few more of these so you can have your afternoon. In December, PSE, a contractor that was a consultant that was hired by PSE at CENSE's urging, we were sort of relentless on the safety issue, and PSE finally said, okay, we're going to get a consultant to look at this pipeline safety issue and, you know, lay your fears to rest. This came out in December, and the PSE immediately turned around and said, see, the safety report, the pipeline safety report says that this project is safe. If you actually read it, it doesn't say that. It says that PSE's preferred route violates safety limits. It has an unpredictable risk range. And of course, this is the route that is less than 300 feet from Tyee Middle School. So PSE frequently says in its marketing message, safety is our top priority. If that were true, we wouldn't have their preferred route being less safe than some of the other routes. Now, in our EIS comments, at least CENSE is not going to say, hey, we like this route better than that route, because we think the whole thing belongs nowhere on the east side. But it kind of gives you an idea of their priorities If they say safety is a priority, they're not following through in this case. This is an amazing thing. Energize East Side will not reduce the number of power outages that we experience. This is very strange because PSE says this is a reliability project. But when we asked during a reliability update to the city of Bellevue, we said, oh, so how is this going to improve, the number of outages and the duration of outages that we experience? Their liaison to city government said, well, actually, it's not that kind of project. So the outages that you experience are typically caused by storms, caused by things like this that happened on Newport Way just some months ago, actually, this year. Trees fell down and took out distribution lines. Distribution lines are the smaller lines that serve our neighborhoods. And those are the ones that are typically impacted in storms. And so Energize East Side does not change this equation at all, and PSE has admitted that. From the very, very beginning, we questioned the need for this project. And PSE explained the need in this very nice chart that shows electricity usage, actually demand, this is sort of the instantaneous demand on their system, increasing at a very fast rate during the years to come. And they said, well, this is because the East Side is growing so fast, our economy is growing so fast, that's why we think that demand is going to increase at this just incredible rate. The thing is that it's taken longer for this project to get going than PSE anticipated. And now they have data values. These were forecasts, 2014, 2015, 2016. These were forecasts that we now have, or PSE now has data for. And so we're going, oh, well, I wonder what those values are. Well, PSE disappeared this graph from their website. And we think it's because if they put the actual values on that graph, they would not be growing very fast. In fact, they might be going down. That would be kind of embarrassing. So they just don't show this graph anymore. It is an amazing thing that this EIS does not have a single graph showing us what the problem is. And I think that's because PSE does not want to show you what the problem is. Now, why are we thinking that these values might be going down? It's because of this. This is a graph using PSE's own data for the city of Bellevue that shows even though during the past 5 years our population has grown by 7.3%, our actual electricity use, and this is total electricity use for Bellevue, this isn't just individual customers, the total has gone down by 5.7%. People are going, whoa, how is that possible? Energy efficiency, LED lights, conservation, they're all having a major impact on electricity consumption in the Pacific Northwest. And this isn't just Bellevue that's experiencing this. This is Seattle City Light says they're seeing the same thing. The Northwest Power and Conservation Council says efficiency is really the answer to all our electricity needs in the next couple of decades. So PSE is really swimming against the tide on this, and I think they're just counting on the fact that what they say, you've probably heard it, just look at all the high-rises going up in Bellevue. Obviously, our electricity use must be increasing. It's actually not.
So I'm wondering, is there a mandate from the city council or whoever that PSE reduce or somehow improve conservation, or
so there are
conservation efforts?
There are state level initiatives that require them to do things. Like, for example, I have 2 solar panel systems on my roof, and I get a nice rate of actually it's payments from PSE for the power that I'm putting onto the grid for them. But that's not PSE's choice. That is a mandate by the state. There are some initiatives from our from cities with PSE, but we think there could be a lot more. If that was what was needed to address rising electricity consumption, I think we could do a lot better than what we're doing now. But I think we're doing pretty good right now. And PSE even admitted in October, they sent out a little bill insert that said, wow, you guys conserved 7% more electricity than what we were expecting. And we said, that's interesting. How does that affect the graph? And then the graph disappears. So, yeah.
To add to your point about data that was not available or that they're not producing, a contact of mine at PSE was so excited this winter because we were going to get so many days of extremely cold weather.
Yeah.
He was excited because now they can get real data because he's always frustrated with having to guess at data.
Ah,
And
interesting.
since that cold period, he stopped talking to me about it because he's not allowed to.
That's very interesting. Actually, Warren Halverson over here asked PSE, how many of your gas plants did you have to fire up during that extreme cold? I mean, that was extremely cold weather, and PSE wouldn't answer that question.
I think it's below 26 degrees is
Yeah.
critical.
23 degrees is what they're modeling as their critical. I mean, for Energize East Side, I don't know, they might have other numbers, but for their scenario, Energize East Side, they assume 23 degrees or less, 1,500 megawatts to Canada, local generation plants turned off. Yeah.
Hey, Don?
Yeah.
Could you go back to number 2? I'm waiting for number 1 anxiously. Go back one more slide.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say this, Don and this whole team has spent phenomenal amount of hours trying to get statistics from PSE, and they won't give them to us. But we've looked at this graph for the last 4 years, and they've used it twice. And in the EIS, phase 1, they have that graph. And they say they need 74 megawatts of power by 2017, 2018, or you're going to have rolling blackouts. Don't forget, you got 1,500 going to Canada. You got potentially 2,850 going down to California. They need 74 megawatts.
Yeah.
That's all. And the conservation that's going on and so forth, we've been to a lot of conferences, talking to people, is phenomenal. That graph is absolutely bogus. And if it isn't, PSE should give you the statistics and prove there is need.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
Warren did a lot of work on this graph. Just if you notice the, misfire on the thing here. If you notice here, the slope seems to be steeper than over here, which is a little bit weird. This area here is growing at what we say almost 10 times the rate that Seattle City Light is projecting for their customers. So it's just really weird. One side of Lake Washington is growing at less than 0.4%. The other side is growing at this is about 3.7%, did you calculate, something like that?
3.8, and
Yeah.
that was brought to the attention of Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission. And for you business folks out there, you'll appreciate this. This is what's called back-end loading your graph to make it look good.
Yep. Okay, so our number one complaint with this EIS is why are we still talking about all these different route options? We really expected that the EIS at this time would tell us, okay, here's the route we're going to use, here's where the poles are going to go, here's the trees that we're going to have to take out. This is necessary in order to evaluate the environmental impact. And instead, what we have is, lots of routes, no specificity at all, and that means that the EIS says, oh, this is in the early stage of planning, so we just use conservative assumptions on impacts, and as if that's good enough. That is not good enough. When are we going to get, when they make the decision, that's when you need an EIS to evaluate what the specific environmental impacts are. This is very, very annoying. So we say, how is it possible that anyone can evaluate the environmental impact of Energize East Side when Energize East Side is not defined?
Question about that. They started
Yeah.
will be going into in my neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And in that case, they had already tagged the trees that they intend to remove and replace. So what about that aspect?
Well,
They seem
I
to
don't,
know what
I'm
they're
not
doing.
sure, whether you really know or not, because this EIS says that they tagged 10,400 trees, something like that, but they are only going to have to remove about 52% of those. So only, 3,600 to 5,400. So just because it's been inventoried and tagged doesn't necessarily mean that tree is going to go.
I was there when they were tagging the trees on my street, and they wouldn't tell me what each number meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
But we should give them names, name each tree.
They did name each tree, and I could hear them naming apple tree,
Steve,
pear tree.
Steve, Kathy, Rod.
Don,
Oh, okay. Yes.
to your last slide, is it then probable, based on what I'm hearing here, there is a specific project, and there is a route that's been chosen, and it has been planned?
We think that's been the case for many years, and it's strategic. All the PSE is doing this. So some of these crazy routes, like there's something called a bypass route that takes the line all over Bellevue and into downtown Bellevue in order to avoid the East Bellevue Community Council. I believe that was done for two reasons. One, to punish the East Bellevue Community Council for not playing ball on the Lake Hills line. And two, if you can get some of the EIS commenters to say, oh, this route is terrible, why don't you put it over there? Then it's kind of an implicit endorsement, like, we like this project as long as it's over there. If they had chosen just one route, then everybody who's some distance from the route, goes back to their normal life or whatever. And only the people who are negatively impacted would be putting in comments, and they would all be negative. So this is kind of a game that we think PSE has been playing from day one. It's kind of keep us all unsure and fighting our neighbors like, oh, it should go here, no, it should go there. Yes?
Every time we talk about trees, shouldn't we talk about carbon?
Oh, absolutely,
5,000
absolutely.
trees should have
Yes.
a current
Yes.
carbon number
Yes.
that's costing you and a future
Yeah.
carbon
Yeah.
number that it doesn't mitigate.
Yes. We've done a little bit of work on that, but it could probably be fleshed out more. So that's a great thing to look at. Yes.
I'd just like to offer a slightly alternative perspective. I've worked in environmental consulting for 20 years, and I've done EISs. And it is a requirement to provide different routes of it.
Uh-huh.
And so, but they should have a preferred route. I haven't read this EIS.
They do have a preferred route.
So the preferred route is often the route of choice. And I think your comments about the other routes are often done for political purposes, and I wouldn't disagree with your statements at
Okay.
all. But I would say that they can't just select one route.
Yes.
They are required to have alternative routes. So focus your comments on the preferred route, because that is honestly often what they are planning to implement, unless they have comments that are overwhelmingly and negative, or there's a lot of comments.
Okay.
And I would say make
Very
sure
good.
you put as much fact and detail in your comments. It's not good to use words like feel,
Yeah.
and you need words like this study, that analysis, this
Right.
report, that incident.
Right.
Whatever you can reference that gives solidity to your comments will
Right.
hugely affect the substantive weight of your letter.
Right. And to that point, that preferred route currently is not the safest route according to with the pipeline safety report. So I think that's
huge.
It's very big.
Hey, Don, could you go back to the safety, pipeline safety? I just wanted to make a quick comment.
Let's see, that one?
Is it number 5?
It was number 4.
Number 4, can I make a comment on
Yeah.
that? So, if you look at, I love Don's top 10. I used to talk about the top 5, but the top 10 is even better. If you look at Olympic BP Pipeline's own website, you'll see that it takes quite a long time to turn the valves off. The valves are not, there were some questions
Yeah.
about that. So we think there needs to be more valves closer together, but there's a spacing issue relative to pressure, blowing the line out of the ground. It's only about 3 to 4 feet underground with 18, 20 inch or 22 inch lines. And there are manual valves and there are automatic valves. The automatic valves are controlled in the control room. They can be turned off in, I think it says somewhere between 8 and 10 and 20 minutes. But that's really too late. But you can't turn them off, shut them down faster because it would blow the line out. The manual valves can take up to an hour or two to get someone on site to do that. Think of it, what if it happened if we had a major 9.0 earthquake at 2 in the morning? You're probably talking an hour or two or longer to get people out to shut off the valves. How many people have heard about the San Mateo County, San Bruno, California suburb, the Crestmore neighborhood near the San Francisco airport, 2 miles west? Now that was a 30-inch natural gas pipeline, okay? So when that blew, it incinerated 38 homes, killed 8 people, sent dozens of people to the ICU. They were not able to turn the valves off for 90 minutes. 90 minutes. The wall of flame was 1,000 feet high. People saw it from many miles away. It was an inferno. Turned the neighborhood into ash. The crater, the explosion crater, was almost 200 feet by 25 or 40 feet by 40 feet deep.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how hot that was, but it was hot. It just reduced the neighborhood to ash. So we have a situation here where that pipeline is running right through the residential neighborhoods. And to co-locate this very high transmission line next to the line with all the risk of corrosion and leaks and potential explosion, it would be catastrophic beyond. I think it's one of our strongest points because that would be absolutely catastrophic. There was one $3 million fine. They settled for, I think it was $90 million with the families, and that just occurred last month. And also last month they paid the biggest fine ever, $1.6 billion. It's the biggest fine. So that could be a pretty scary situation. So I think it's one of our strong cards. But
Well, thank you, Steve.
I hope
That's
that answers your questions
good
about
stuff.
valves, and we need to have more. We need to have more valves.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And better the use of better technology for that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Just the final thing is that our top 10 issues are really just the tip of the iceberg on what could be commented on this EIS. So anything that you feel you can add, either specifics about your neighborhood or something that you know about. We've got a lot of expertise in this area. We're very highly educated and capable folks. So we have a real advantage here compared to there's some parts of the country that would not have as much natural experience and expertise to answer these questions. So if you are an expert on something, please talk to us. We'd love to know what you know. And the final point is that this is really our last chance to comment on this EIS. The next step is the final EIS will be published, hopefully taking into account some of these comments. The EIS staff actually has to respond to every comment that's made. So that's why big volume of comments makes them work pretty hard. Let's see, yeah.
So in the EIS phase 1, we had so many comments, the trees, the earthquake, the
Yeah.
wind,
everything, right?
Right.
We would expect them to answer in phase 2.
Yes.
We're still asking them the same questions, so how do we hold them responsible to get it in the final?
Well, so if you ask a question and they don't respond, I believe that that would be cause for litigation. So that's the ultimate way you hold people responsible in this society is, unfortunately, you have to go to court over it. And we are anticipating that that may be necessary. The first step in this, though, is this administrative hearing. So CENSE is going to hire multiple experts in different areas of expertise. And of course, we've got a very capable lawyer representing us. So that is our focus now, is getting everything lined up so that we can create a legal record that then might be considered by the city council, would be considered by the courts if we get to that stage. So I would say that PSE sometimes says they want to build this by start building it by the summer of 2018. That is, I'd say that's pretty unlikely that they would be able to get through the challenges ahead in this time. And every day longer that this takes, we have more great information on energy usage trends, on technology that's really coming on strong. So making them work for it is actually a good part of our strategy. Yes, Kurt?
You might want to mention that in order for your comments part of the record, provide your full name and home.
Yes. So this, in fact, this is an interesting thing that was just told to me before the meeting started. There are multiple ways that you can submit your comments into the EIS. You can send them through mail, old style mail. You can do it through email, but there's 2 different ways that you can submit on the Energize Eastside EIS page. One way is to use a form that they provide, and in that case, if you use that form, your comments will be entered into the public record. However, they realize that some people may want to make a comment, but they don't necessarily want to get credit for it. They'd like a response, but they don't want their comment to be out in the public. So if you send email to the email address they provide, you will get a response, but it won't be included in the public record. So if you have something to say that you'd prefer to be a little bit more quiet about it, there's that option too. Anything substantive that you find or that you want to send to them, if you'd like to send a copy to us, you could just say info@sense.org, send us a copy of your comments or something that you found. We may be able to expand on it or do more investigation, or at least provide reference to your comments. If you say, so when you provide a comment for the public record, you have to give your name and address. If you say you're a member of CENSE, then we can take that comment and use it in our legal case later on. So please consider doing that. I'm a member of CENSE, and then we can take maximum advantage of that good information.
I have 2 questions. Number 1, if I say something about, well, we obviously know that if the pipe ruptures in an earthquake, we've got a catastrophe on our hand. Is there evidence to show that just putting the line up there, the high-powered line, higher than it used to be on a bigger pole, is that dangerous in and of itself? Can the emissions from that line ignite something down in the pipeline?
I don't believe it would happen just like that. In a normal circumstance, lots of energy flow, lots of fluid going down below. I don't think that's the danger scenario. The danger scenario that we've seen a couple of times now is if something happens to that line and it comes down and it's still alive, which they can't easily detect that it needs to be shut off at that time. And that electricity arcs into the pipeline, that is a big concern, and having higher voltage means it can arc further and it has more power to drill into the casing. So that is the scenario that
You could
really
do that
worries
through
me.
3 feet of soil.
Yeah.
So, oh, absolutely. It actually turns the soil to glass on its way down, yeah. It gets it very hot.
Okay, my second question is this, that I'm obviously equally concerned about the visual effect upon my property. Should I just avoid that issue altogether because they're gonna think it's a NIMBY kind of?
No, absolutely not. That is,
This table over here concentrates on that.
yes, in fact, that's a perfect opportunity to point out our tables. So we've got 4 tables around the room that are concentrated on different parts of the EIS. So if you have a particular interest, I mean, feel free to visit all 4. And there's sheets there that tell you, what parts of the EIS are particularly pertinent in that particular thing. But we have